Hey, Armin here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
Hey, and I'm Frank Mills, and today we've got another great show for you. Armin has put a lot of work into this show, as he always does. But, we got a question for you. Have you ever done cluster sets? Do you know what they are? We're going to talk about that today. And what can happen from having too much caffeine? I've had a little bit too much this morning, so you're seeing some of the effects right now. Anyway, I get a little hyper. But that's what happens. Also, if you drink too much, Armin, you get that coffee feeling,
Oh,
right?
oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll talk about all that. But it's a rainy day in Tampa Bay, and we're ready to get this show started. So back to the question, Armin. Have you ever done cluster sets? It's a pretty interesting topic to me. I've heard a lot of
Mhm.
clusters. I've heard of a lot of different kind of clusters, but not cluster sets. So
Yeah.
let's start with cluster set. What is it?
All right. So what I've learned and been experimenting with is it's multiple of typically three sets, sometimes more, where you're going to either a set rep scheme or what
Mm-hmm.
I like to do, I go to failure. And then you only take between a 15 to 20 second or 15 to 20 count break. And
Okay.
then you go again using the same weight. So you pick a particular weight and you keep going with it for those three or more sets. Like what I do is to failure, but there's other versions of it. So for
Okay.
example, um, you know, some people want to do like you try to do six reps or 12 reps or 8 reps, that kind of thing, or like three
Mm-hmm.
sets of 3 reps, that kind of stuff. So, but what you got to keep in mind is how it affects you. And I
Mm-hmm.
really like them. I've been doing them, and this is kind of similar to what Vince Verano would do with the 8x8 and the 6x6. But you use these a little bit differently as far as strategy wise,
Mm-hmm.
for different muscle groups. So
Well, you talked about strategy, so you got me a little curious here. So what would be the purpose of doing a cluster set instead of like maybe some of the normal routines or other routines that other people do?
So what happens when you do a cluster set? You're gonna, increase your intensity level because
Mm-hmm.
you have a very short break. And so again, a 15 to 20 count, and then you got to go again. And so the muscles are obviously going to fatigue as you keep going. And so
Mm-hmm.
like with me, I go to failure. So I may get 10 or 12 reps in the first one, and you're going to pick up pretty heavy weight.
Right.
So, and
Right.
again, it depends on, we'll talk more about different strategies on that, but you pick the weight and you go to failure, then you take that break and then you go again. So your heart rate stays up, but also as you're doing this, you're pushing a lot of blood to that area that you're training. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's one of the other uh, benefits of it. So this is going to help stimulate more muscle fiber because it's going to help expand the fascia and the capillaries by pushing so much blood to it. I mean, I don't think this is anything new for anybody. It's just that
Right.
if you're not using them, it's a great strategy to kind of change things up and increase your intensity. So the intensity level is what I really liked about it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, what about some examples? Can you give us some examples of a cluster set?
Yeah, so like one of them that I like to do is doing dumbbell presses for my chest. And so, again, I'd pick a weight that I could probably get 10 to 12 reps with. So it's got to be, I want to go pretty heavy because that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing that you're trying to do here. And then, I'll get as many reps as I can. So whatever that ends up being, then I set the weight back down and I do my count. You can also use a timer, whatever's easiest for
Right.
you.
Okay.
And then as soon as I hit that mark, even though I'm not ready, I go again to see how many I can get. And generally I keep going until I can't get, minimum of 6 or more reps is what I like to do. Because then I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if I can get 6 or more reps, I got enough time under tension with all three sets to really stimulate a lot of muscle fiber, and to, again, push a lot of blood into the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is pretty intense. So as you're doing it, you got to figure out how am I going to get these reps up. So, but again, I typically do it for like 3 different rounds.
Hmm.
So then I'm pretty taxed at that point, because generally when you do it that way, you're not going to get all the reps. Now, if for some reason I didn't get the minimum 6 reps that I wanted on that
Right.
last set, then I'll put the weight down and do like a 5 or 10 count, and then try to squeeze out whatever reps I didn't get, so I get that minimum 6. So that's kind of how I like to use cluster sets. So
Okay.
another example would be for legs. Okay, so again, I like to use it for something heavy that I can push myself with, but also it's pretty safe. So I like to do it with a leg press or leg extension, for that matter, if you want to do something isolation wise.
Hmm.
But you load up that leg press with, again, heavy weights. I'll try to do 12 reps or so is what I want to try to maintain. And again, that can vary from person to person. But
Right.
then you
Right.
rest for 15 count and go again until you get all 3 rounds done. And I actually did it yesterday, and my quads are just like, whew. But I was using heavy weight, and I had to really work hard to get the minimum reps I wanted. So for me, I like to do 20 to 12 reps for my legs. And so obviously the first set I got, like 18, and the second
Right.
set I barely got 12. And then the third set I had to squeeze out 12, and
Hmm.
I got it, but then I was pretty much toast at the end in that example.
So I'm kind of curious, what about your actual timing or the sequence or a type of account scheme do you use? Is it as fast as you can, or do you have a certain type of a technique that you use when you do a cluster set?
Well, as far as the strategy behind it, there's a lot of ways you can approach it. So I
Okay.
don't like doing a cluster set in the beginning, because I'm just training the muscle and training it hard.
Hmm.
But it's a great way to finish up a body part, to really maximize blood flow. And so I like to do them sometimes in the middle or sometimes at the end. I don't really like doing it in the beginning, but that's my personal preference. I mean, you can do them. However, the reason I don't like doing it in the
Hmm.
beginning is because I get so fatigued that I think it's going to affect what else I'm going to do in the workout. So again, I like to use them at either in the middle or at the end, just to make sure I knocked it out of the park with the stimulated muscle fiber. So that's one of the things I do.
Well, you just brought up the beginning and the middle and the end. Do you have a strategy that you use, or maybe that you can kind of recommend of trying to train a muscle group?
All right, so this strategy can work for a lot of different movements. So you have to
Okay.
determine, okay, is it gonna, am I gonna use this for compound movements, or am I gonna use it for isolation movements? And you can use it for either one. Again, you're gonna use a good solid weight, a heavy weight, a max weight, and then push it. So, but what I like to do with the strategy part of it is I like to use this for the muscle groups that I'm struggling with.
Right. Right.
So if I want to work my chest more, the overall chest, then that's why I do dumbbell presses. But there's nothing wrong with doing the same thing with pec deck or flies, to
Hmm.
really isolate and really fatigue at the very end, to really, get as much blood flow in that area. So it's a matter of preference. But as examples, for me, I like to do them with a lot of compound movements. So like heavy dumbbell presses for
Hmm.
chest. And again, you can do, incline dumbbell presses as well, which I've done those, or machine presses, all those will work. If you're doing row and lat movements,
Hmm.
those are really good for your back, to do these kind of clusters. And then
Hmm.
it really jacks up your heart rate on the back movements. Quads, obviously, leg presses, hack squat, even squats and leg extensions. But you want to make sure that if you're going to hit the wall, and you have safety built in. So that's why I
Hmm.
like using machines most of the time for these type of movements. Hamstrings, you can do lying or seated leg curl movements. Again, those would be like lying leg curl or even seated leg curl. Um, lunges could be a little more challenging, because
Right.
you're getting out of breath so bad. But I
Hmm.
think it's great for those. Obviously, for calves, you know that is what it is. You're just going to keep pushing blood into the calf. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it right now, and I like experimenting with it, and then trying different movements to see how much fatigue I really get, and make sure
Hmm.
I'm not. I'm trying to make sure I'm fatiguing the area that I want to get the most blood flow to.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So is this something that you use for all exercises, Armin, or, are there certain select exercises that you target?
Yeah, you don't want to use it for all exercises because
Okay.
you're going to get probably overwhelmed because it's a lot of it increases your intensity, so your focus also is going to diminish as you fatigue because
Hmm.
it's not easy to do, but it does allow you to do maybe one or two exercises with it versus, and maybe you could do a compound type of exercise like presses and then an isolation exercise movement like pec deck or cable fly, something like that. There's nothing wrong with that because you're only doing three rounds. Um, but the thing is, it's so intense and it jacks up your heart rate so much that you just got to kind of hang in there. So, and I think what Vince found that as well when he was doing the 8x8, the 6x6, and those very short rest periods,
Hmm.
very effective. But back in those days, they only had a certain amount of exercises they would use anyways. So
Right.
that's why the 8x8 and 6x6, I think, was really a great program at that point. But now you have so many different movements that this can allow you to kind of experiment with those movements, but not every single you're not going to do it every single workout. You just kind of pick it on an area that you really want to focus on and see how much stimulation you can get. Now, what you'll learn is the soreness is pretty good. I mean, you're gonna be like, whew, the next
Hmm.
day. So, but that's good. Typically, that's good news. That means you've really done a lot to stimulate the fibers you're looking to stimulate.
Okay. All right. So I'm kind of curious, after doing this, exactly what did you notice from you doing your cluster sets, and maybe what kind of effects did things happen to you after you doing them?
Well, it's really unique how it works. First thing you're gonna get increased pump in the muscle. Okay,
Hmm.
but then when you get this intense pump like this, you start feeling other muscles that you may not have noticed before. Which
Right.
that
Right.
was something I found pretty interesting, especially on leg presses, as the quads are really fatiguing. Other parts of the leg muscle, start activating to help take the pressure off. So that was pretty cool. You're gonna obviously get a jacked heart rate because you got very little time to let your heart rate come down, and then you do get pretty much extreme fatigue, mentally and physically, depending on how hard you go. So you'll need a little more recovery time before you go to another exercise. So that's another
Hmm.
reason why I like to do it maybe at the end or no sooner than in the middle of a workout because you need a little time for that recovery after you do that particular exercise.
Okay. So for somebody who's never done a cluster set, and let's say they want to implement this into their workout routine,
Yeah.
um, how would you suggest for someone to implement this into their new into their new workout plan or into a workout plan that they're currently doing?
Well, it'd be like the same thing I did for myself is, as I, learned about it, I was like, let me just try this out. So I just picked one
Hmm.
particular exercise and I, went and exercise again because I'm doing something different. I thought, let me just focus on a weaker muscle group. And I just tried to execute it as best I could. And I could tell a difference. So, when you do it, I think you should make some notes, or if you have an app, put some notes in your app.
Hmm.
I like both of them are going to be effective, but then it gives you some feedback. So when you do it again, the curious part is are you getting stronger where you can
Right.
get more reps, and then if you get more reps, then obviously you can push it up to another level because
Hmm.
it's just three sets. 8x8, when you start moving up on the weight, is not easy to do because 8x8 is so taxing that when you get to the end, it's like you can barely get it done. So to add more weight at some point is going to take you a lot longer, but it does
Hmm.
have a great effect. So this allows you to kind of adjust things, I think, a little quicker. And
Hmm.
again, this is to kind of see how you're improving. So,
Gotcha.
the other thing is because it's different, you're not dreading it. Like some exercises, you kind of dread them because you've done them so much. You're like, I don't want
Right.
to do that exercise. Lunges, I dread lunges. I don't like them. Okay, but they're effective exercise. So you really
Hmm.
don't want to eliminate it, but you want it, whatever you're going to do, you want to change it up so you have a little bit fresher approach to doing it. So that's what I like.
So you've obviously been doing this for a while. Quite a while. You've done a lot of different exercise, a lot of
Yeah.
different training, but kind of curious, what are the benefits, long-term benefits from trying to implement this strategy?
Well, from my experience, my opinion, you know, you're going to see some increased strength, which is good news. And I think it helps the muscle density because you're using a heavy weight. And so that really this stimulates more muscle fiber. So it's going to help thicker because you're going to stimulate more white or fast twitch muscle fiber, in my opinion. So that
Mm-hmm.
helps with the muscle thickness and muscle density. And again, it's going to happen over time. But that's why you want to kind of track it to see, how things change. And you obviously look in the mirror, you can tell as well. But that's kind of how I've kind of understood it, and I really like doing it. So, but I would encourage people to at least try it, see what you think. But I think it's a very effective way to change things up, and also just challenge yourself to see what you can actually do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, as we wrap up, any added information that you'd like to finish with, Armin?
Yeah. So, again, just start with something simple, and that way you can learn the implementation of it. Keep playing with other exercises as you start learning how it works to see how it stimulates. Because like anything, you have to experiment with it to see how you'll respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody I've used it with, and plus myself, the response is, oh wow, that's a game changer. Again, that doesn't mean it's going to be the same response every time you do it, okay? But it's a
Right,
nice way
right.
to plug some new intensity in, and challenge yourself with some really heavy weight, obviously with good form, so you don't do anything to injure yourself, and really max out what your workout's going to be. And then, obviously make sure your recovery's good because it does affect your recovery. So I mean, my quads today are just like, I'm a little tired.
Well, a lot of great information on cluster sets. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And now we're going to share a little bit with you. Hey, I'm going to highly recommend NSP's milk and egg protein shake. I think their protein powder is probably the best I've ever tasted. We've talked about
Yeah.
it before, but I'll tell you what, if you haven't tried it, I highly encourage you to try it. What they have, chocolate and vanilla and cherry almond flavors, right, Armin?
Mhm. Yeah, it's really good protein powder. And, it's a premium protein powder too. It's not going to be a cheaper way, but it's a high quality, and you'll notice it when you take it, how it fills you
Mm-hmm.
up totally differently, and then how you respond to it. So just that's why I like it.
Absolutely. So go to nspnutrition.com and check it out. But right now, stand by for a quick word from NSP Nutrition, and Armin and I will be right back.
Hey, and welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills. And, we're going to talk about what can happen when you have too much caffeine. And I think I had a little too much this morning, as I said earlier. I get a little jittery. You break out in a little bit of a sweat. That's what happens to me. And then, if you don't eat something, you get that coffee terrible feeling in your stomach. So I don't know if that's a part of it, but I'm kind of curious. So this is pretty interesting to me, Armin. So what made you think of this topic about having too much caffeine?
Well, I like caffeine as well, just like
Mm-hmm.
everybody else. And it comes in different forms. It doesn't have to be coffee. I mean, there's a lot of different forms of it that's out there,
Mm-hmm.
but it is everywhere because caffeine works. You drink caffeine, you have an immediate response. So that's why
Yes.
people like it. So it's one of those supplements or one of those food sources that you can tell right away, hey, this stuff works. So it gives you good feedback. Okay. But like anything, because it does that, you kind of keep going back to it because you like the way it made you feel initially. So
Mm-hmm.
what you need to understand is there is a point of diminishing returns. And that's what we want to kind of talk about because I love caffeine too.
Well, if you see the guys in law enforcement, I worked for a staffing company. There's a lot of instances where you've got to keep going and you need energy.
Yeah.
And, at the staffing office I worked in, people were drinking coffee all day.
Oh yeah.
Before
Well, there you
lunch,
go.
after lunch, 3 o'clock, was a hot time around the coffee pot because people were, running out of energy. So they had to get some more in them.
Right.
It, that leads me to this. I'm kind of curious. Is there a recommended amount of caffeine that you should have in a day?
Well, there is, obviously the government gets involved with this stuff too. So the Food and
Mm-hmm.
Drug Administration basically states that, keep it under 400 milligrams a day, which is basically breaks down to 4 cups of regular coffee as a guideline. But I mean, you really want to read labels if you're using other sources of food. But that's supposed to be 400 milligrams or less can be considered healthy for healthy adults. So
All right. Well, then I'm in big trouble because I have the 4 cups in the morning. So, I
mm-hmm.
have to admit, in the afternoon, I'm ready for some more if I'm starting to feel a little bit lethargic or a little tired. But
Yeah.
let's talk about what you feel, because I brought up a couple of things. You feel like a nervousness, maybe some
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Of course, you're going to get an elevated heart rate. You're going to break out in some sweats, right? But you know, is this the things that everybody experiences? Is that what you experience?
Well, see, that's another reason why I wanted to talk about it because, everybody has a different tolerance to
Mm-hmm.
caffeine. And I have and you probably as well, have a high tolerance for caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
So, but some people, they really get affected by caffeine. So, and if you're one of those type people, you obviously need to be really careful because your body really responds to it versus when I have caffeine, I respond to it. The first couple of cups are like, okay, I'm awake. I mean, I feel good, but then you keep going back to get some more because you want to keep that good energy feeling coming up. And, that's where things start. The body's like going, we got a lot of it now. So
Right.
as we got to
Right.
figure out, okay, what are we going to do? So the thing is with this stuff, it's going to vary from person to person. But if you do have a high tolerance, that's something else you need to make sure, even though you have a high tolerance, there's not a lot of benefits by taking a lot more of it. And that's what we
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of touch on here.
Well, you help me combat not having as much caffeine, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the show. But let's talk about the effects of caffeine. What about long term? Is there long term effects for having too much caffeine?
So this is what I'm learning by working with a lot of the clients I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when I have all this lab work done with each client, certain things come up. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's causing this to be elevated? And so like one of them that I learned about a while back is, for males, your sex binding hormone globulins can be affected by high caffeine intake. And so what that does, it increases your sex binding hormone globulins for whatever reason. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what some of the studies are saying. So when that happens, that affects your free testosterone. So that affects your energy. So that's one thing I've learned that was like, wow. And so then you have to do supplements to bring the sex binding hormone globulins down. But if you don't change your caffeine intake, you're still not going to make any progress. So I got one
Right.
particular client that it's been a struggle. So then may even have to go on. He may have to go on a prescription for a while just to get that sex binding hormone globulins back under control.
Wow.
So it was a real
Okay.
eye opener on that.
Hmm.
Another one is kidney function. It can help. It can affect your kidneys because you're gonna
Yep.
typically urinate more because of the way caffeine stimulates the system, but it can also give you kidney stones. So that's something else you want to keep in mind, and especially if you get kidney stones, then you got to watch your coffee intake. Um, the other one that I really was amazed by is with research and learning more is it can affect your insulin sensitivity.
Hmm.
So if you drink a lot of coffee or caffeine throughout the day, that's going to cause your insulin to stay more elevated, and that's what can cause you to start becoming, insulin resistant. So
Gotcha.
this is another eye opener. And I got another client that fits this to the glove that they drink. They're probably taking in about 1,000 milligrams a day, and his glucose readings keep coming up. And even though he's doing other things that shouldn't happen, it could
Mm-hmm.
be the coffee, it could be the caffeine that he's taking in. So what we're going to do, we're going to work on getting him to cut it back, which is he's not happy about. But at the same time, we'll see if it makes a difference. But that's what some of the studies are showing, that you're going to have, higher glucose readings because of too much caffeine. I kind of believe it, because when you look at what people eat, and eating a lot of processed food, but then they're having all this caffeine throughout the day with energy drinks and stuff like that. I
Right.
kind of believe
Right.
it. So, and then the other things is, you can get insomnia, you don't sleep well, you get irritable. Who doesn't get irritable? That's another factor. It doesn't help. Then
Hmm.
you get headaches, and obviously the increased blood pressure, anxiety, and then the digestive issues. But that's mostly coming from not so much the caffeine as it is like the acidity of coffee. That'll start to affect your digestive system, and that's another thing I had to kind of deal with, is affecting it. So I can't have any coffee after 12. If I do, it'll start to irritate my stomach for that. And then
Hmm.
lastly, when you, like anything, when you do the caffeine, after a while, you have that fatigue that kicks in. That's why you want to go back to get more. So it does cause you to have a little bit more fatigue once it drops down as well. So
Well, and that's why a lot of places like Starbucks and these energy drinks that are out are making so much money, because people are craving the caffeine to keep, you know, motivated during work, or, to get an
well,
energy bunch, right?
it's just like people that sell sex. I mean, people like it. So,
Yeah,
then doesn't take a lot to get their attention, because they can tell the difference right away.
that's right.
So
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so you're just taking advantage of, the what you feel from it. And then the companies are like, oh yeah, well, we're going to keep, the food companies keep selling processed food because it's cheap and expensive, and people keep buying it, and
Yep.
they flavor
Yep.
it up. So there you go. It's a money making opportunity.
Well, when you go by Starbucks, there's always somebody there. They're always getting coffee no matter what time.
Oh
So,
yeah.
it does work. Now, let's talk about other forms. We've talked a lot about coffee, but caffeine is in a
Oh yeah.
lot of different things that we are eating and drinking, right?
Yeah. So you really need to read the labels of anything you're taking. It's man made. Okay. So now, obviously with coffee, you're going to be able, what you can look at it pretty easily. But if you're going to buy something that does have caffeine in it, or you're not aware of it, read the label, make sure you know it has caffeine in it, so that you
Hmm.
understand how much you're taking in. Because, you have all these different energy drinks, and they all have caffeine. You have all these different fat burners, they all have caffeine, because caffeine has shown to increase, blood flow, which helps, potentially helps them increase some fat burning or energy expenditure. There's
Hmm.
favorable to that. But that's the thing is, you know it's going to do those things. So
Right.
my point here is regarding people drinking all the energy drinks and the post workout and the pre workout and all these other, fat burning supplements. Read your labels so you know what you're putting in your system, so that you're not overdoing it. Because, exercise will help neutralize caffeine. That's a good thing. But if you're still getting too much after your exercise, you're not gonna you're not helping yourself. And
Right.
that's where we
Right.
have issues with it.
Well, we all, well, I don't want to say we all, but a lot of us do like caffeine, like
Oh
our
yeah.
coffee and other things, either during the day or later in the afternoon. But, you know, any other thoughts or suggestions you have to wrap up the segment, Armin?
Yeah, and so in my opinion, if you start having some health problems, like elevated glucose readings, trouble sleeping, lacking your energy, poor kidney function, say your
Right,
kidney,
right.
or kidney stones, kidney function, you can, if you have lab work done, it'll show if your kidneys are getting overtaxed. But no, kidney stones and digestive issues, then take a look at your caffeine consumption. And if you're over 400 milligrams, then okay, well, what can I do to cut it back? I mean, 400
Hmm.
milligrams isn't bad. I mean, it's 4 cups of coffee, or, maybe two cups of coffee and three espressos, different ways you could look at it, or one energy drink and 2 cups of coffee. Energy drinks will vary from 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine. Now
Hmm.
your pre workouts and your post workouts, they can have pretty high caffeine as well. And so that's why you want to make sure you're doing the math. Uh, it's all I'm saying is you can't keep doing that particular habit ongoing without something starting to affect you. So that's kind of what we want to get at here. Monitor your caffeine intake, and then see how much better you feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with energy drinks,
All right.
on Reality Fitness, we did a show just about energy drinks, and there's so many of them out there too that are not good for you.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and you know, Armin, you've kind of experimented and done a lot of work with energy drinks too.
Oh yeah.
Have you found any of the energy drinks that you think are a good option? Um, let's say in the afternoon, instead of having coffee, if you're looking for energy, are there any quality energy drinks that you can recommend or no?
Well, the ones that I use for myself would be, the sugar-free energy drinks first and foremost. So
Mm-hmm.
I like Celsius. I like that one. It's 200 milligrams, and they have a good amount of electrolytes in it, and some B vitamins and taurine
Mm-hmm.
and other components, which I think are good for you, especially before I do a workout. But
Okay.
now that I'm training in the morning, I don't hardly have that very often because I'm just using coffee because I'm training in the
Gotcha.
morning and I don't feel like doing the Celsius drink. But that was one of them I like to use. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you have others now. If you're a Red Bull fan, just understand that there's aspartame is the sweetener in Red Bull, so you may want to do some research on that because you know
Right.
aspartame has a lot of negativity about it, and there's science saying it doesn't bother you, and the science says it does. So you got to
Right.
make your own decision. I forego the Red Bull drinks because of the aspartame. Now, if I'm going to drink some alcohol, then I don't really worry about it because when I drink alcohol, it neutralizes the aspartame. So
Mm-hmm.
aspartame is basically two amino acids that are basically put together and hold together by wood alcohol. That's why it has a negative connotation. But at the end of the day, it's a very, very small amount. So that's why you have the argument saying it's not a big deal. But if you look at how much
Right.
people consume, like Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, and these other drinks that have aspartame as a sweetener, they consume a lot of it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it still has an effect. And it's not doing anything for you. So why take it? So that's kind of how I look at
Right.
stuff.
It's also quite popular. A lot of the mixed drinks now, they're using Red Bull to go with the alcohol. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have asked for that because they want the energy so they don't get tired.
Yeah.
But hey, I I guess I get it. It's just it's something like anything else. You got to be cautious and careful on what you put in your body.
That and keep it in moderation. So, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a different level of moderation, but again, figure out what works for you so that you have long-term benefits from it versus long-term issues from it. Because when you start doing this habit of using these things,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you start having problems because then you have to change what you were doing, and there's always reluctance when you go through that because you're kind of used to doing it that way. So then you got to change everything, and then that's what
Mm-hmm.
gets kind of frustrating or irritating. Like the one client I
Absolutely.
have, he's got to cut his caffeine back. He has 8 cups of coffee a day. And I'm like, dude, you need to cut this back.
Yeah.
It's causing you problems. He's like, gee, I mean, he's like really disappointed with the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so let's look at some other things you can do to keep your energy up, but at the same time, cut your caffeine back. So anyway,
Well, and that's a part that I was going to allude to is your nutrition is good, you stay hydrated, your
yeah,
supplementation is good, then all of a sudden you might not need that coffee as much as you thought you needed, right?
yeah. I mean, again, you'll have to make adjustments, but yeah, if you're doing
Right.
things that give you good energy, then uh, yeah, you'll feel good. You'll be able to get things done the way you want to get them done. It won't be a crutch saying I got to have my caffeine, otherwise I can't
Right.
function. Yeah,
Right. Right. Well, Armin, as usual, a lot of great information, and we appreciate it very much.
no problem. I really look forward to doing this show every week, and could use some new ideas from you guys out there, guys and gals, and whoever's listening, so we can keep getting you content that you're interested in. So feel free to make a notation there or make a comment so we can check it out.
We look forward to it. And if you do have a comment or question for the show, you can either comment in the YouTube channel underneath the show, or you can email NSP Nutrition. And the easiest way to do that is the email is support@nspnutrition.com. We'll get that either question or comment, or if you have a topic for the show, hey, please send it over. We are relying on you for the content, and we look forward to hearing from you. And Armin and I appreciate your support very much. We appreciate you joining us, and check back next week for a brand new NSP Nutrition Show.
Hey, thanks for checking out the NSP show. Go to nspnutrition.com where you can find a whole heap of resources to help you achieve stunning definition and eye-popping levels of muscularity. Don't forget you can save 10% on your first order by using the code NSP show at the checkout. Catch you next time.